or just a one-time thing?
I don't know at this point. I'm thinking about it, but I'd have right now.
A lot of meteorologists. I'm not sure, but
at this point, I'm up to the point of saying I don't care what day you pick. Just pick a day, pick a time. We'll do it then, whenever. Because I just want to get people on. By the way, we are live for those that may wonder what the heck is going on here. This is Polygon Issuance number 64. What day is today? Friday, of course. June 26, 2015. This is Jeff Wilcox hosting the show as usual. And then our co-conspirator in this cranky episode that we're going to be doing, this is going to be a cranky episode because we're cranky, is John.
I'm always cranky, though.
Yes, well, when it comes to stupid weather stuff that's going on in the world, John Bailey, who is down in Kansas City, he's with Forever Chasing, a storm chase group that does wonderful work in the state of Kansas, Missouri, and whatever state they want to go to.
Yeah, wherever the weather is.
And John is going to complain too about the lack of good storm chases, about the Senate bill that John Thune, Republican out of South Dakota, tried to wheedle his way into the Commerce Committee before it was finally pulled earlier this week and redone for a new act, which sounds even more silly. And the new weather show, America's Next Weatherman, even though that's sexist because there's women on the show. So that's going to be on TBS starting in August. There's like all sorts of stuff going on.
Oh, yeah, we always have stuff.
So I don't know, John, where you'd want to start. Do you want to start?
First off, I have to start and also give a props to weather2020.com since I do stuff with them. Gary Lezak's long-range forecasting company, which does 12-week forecasts for all of the continental United States. So if you wanted we'll call it a perfectly accurate forecast because I'm a company guy. But actually, it is the best long-term weather forecast option out there right now. We're going through a phase or a trial kind of right now where it's easy to be more accepted, and there's a lot of not belief in it. But it's going through the struggles that anything would, and you're, all that good stuff would. But if you have long-term plans like a wedding, an outdoor event, like a race, or just anything, like go golfing in like 7 weeks. Well, your best option of forecast would actually be weather2020.com. You put in your zip code, and hey, we'll have the forecast for you. Is it going to be perfect? No. But no forecast is going to be perfect. You look up anywhere. And for long range, it's probably the best option there is right now. So I have to give that plug out for that. And I'll give a small little plug out to Dan Holiday at the Storm Report. So if we have any people in radio or broadcasting and want any severe weather or forecast done correctly, give him a buzz. His site is thestormreport.com. That should be all that stuff now.
Yeah, he's plugged all his businesses, so now we're going to make Gary Lezak, who is also known as the chief meteorologist at KSHB in Kansas City. We'll make him pay for all that.
Hey, there you go. That's up $5.
Yeah, he has a lot of money, evidently, from what we've been told.
Depends on who you're asking.
But anyway, so that's where John works, and
for a weather show like this, or any, for that matter.
Yeah. So that's where John works while he's not doing stuff like this or out chasing MCSs or heavy.
I try to limit those. When you've seen about 150 MCSs, they kind of get old. At least to me. Now other chasers, maybe not. But
yeah. And that seems to be because we discussed this last week in a private chat where it seems like because the year's been so mediocre storm chasing outside of a couple of events that it seems like this year is just like the year of the MCS. Big explosions of storms, and it just covers the whole, like, multiple states. This year it seems to be Iowa seems to be the target zone for MCSs lately.
Yeah, sounds like we had a nice one a week ago.
Yeah, and it just kills severe weather. Yeah, you're going to get severe weather out of the MCS, wind, hail, maybe a tornado, or two.
Supercell tornado that tornado chaser is after anyhow is not going to be an easy catch. Now, if you're a storm chaser and you're just after structure, wind, shell cloud, hail, go for it. But, you know, I lived in Kansas all my life. That's stuff I see all the time. So now if you live in like Arizona, hey, that's something totally new to you. I understand why you're fascinated with it. It makes sense. But for me, no. Just, I don't know.
You're all about the infamous dry lines in West Texas, Western Oklahoma, and Western Kansas that tend to get.
That's always the best. Like Eastern Colorado, Western Kansas, the high plains events I like the most. The most. They typically, all the cells aren't HP, they're more classic or LP.
Yeah.
There, like in Colorado, when we were out there a few weeks ago, we could see 30 miles. I love that. Out here, sometimes you can't see half a mile. It's just an amazing difference in the quality. You can't hear me. And the quality difference it is just in terms of chasing. Now, the only problem you can get when you're out that far west is sometimes the roads are limited. That depends where you're at out there in the high plains. But yeah, West Texas and Southwest Kansas are still just fun.
But so when we look at it, when was technically the last time of any good chasing in, let's say, Kansas and Colorado, or in, say, the high plains, pretty much?
2013 comes to mind with the Roselle, Kansas event. I don't know if you remember that, but that was a pretty good setup out there just west of Great Bend, west of Wichita. But trying to think. And then the Pilger, Nebraska event last year was about the only good one we had in the plains. Probably there's a 2-day event there.
Yeah.
Outside of that, I can't think of anything unless you want to call Rochelle, Illinois, the plains, but it's really not for this year. Trying to think what else I've seen. There's a couple events in Oklahoma. They were still tough for this year. The Texas events were there, but I think they were a lot more difficult than people lead on them to be. They were pretty HP and pretty in some areas difficult to chase with limited road options. And kind of in the hill country there, like south and west of Dallas. I remember that. And Colorado had some really good setups off and on this year. So I'll give Colorado its due. It did fine. But Colorado is more of a guess deal than a skill deal. By that I mean you just kind of have to be there. And if you live there, if you're lucky. You can see that stuff all the time. If you're farther away from it, you kind of just have to plan it or do some really great forecasting. And timing out there is just more difficult because you have thunderstorms and fire on the Rockies every day this time of year. So determining like which complex is going to produce supercells and tornadoes out of every day in June is tougher. Can it be done? Of course, there's great chasers to do that, but it's not simple. It's not like the classic dry line setup that you get in the middle of Kansas or Oklahoma or whatever.
Now, when we talk about 2013, which is pretty much, in most cases, only the severe weather season, the chase season lasted, what, 6 weeks? And it pretty much ended with El Reno. And then outside of the event in Northwest Iowa, Northeast Nebraska in October, 2013 was April, May, and October 4th, and that was it, pretty much.
Yeah, especially center in Oklahoma. 2013 will always be known as the year for Oklahoma because of El Reno and the other F5 tornado that we had, Moore, which is going to hit constantly. That's another thing we could go over. How does Moore always get hit?
Yeah, it seems like, because it's interesting, 2013, you could literally say, was the year of Oklahoma for tornadoes, and then 2014, Oklahoma had almost no tornadoes and had a record low. And then this year, it seems like they're trying to make up for it, but it's not as bad as 2013, even though more Oklahoma got hit again, even a much weaker tornado. But
we had a El Nino this year for one, and El Nino is known for being more kind of like wet systems, and maybe
which will mean more HPs.
Yep, which means more HPs to try, and also reduces the spear threat because you have more rain, widespread rain, and morning convection, and all that kind of stuff, which can hamper the ability to chase. We don't have a cap with El Ninos essentially.
Yeah.
What happened this year and last year, a lot of times, is the cap was weak, and it limited the ability of the severe weather. So we had a lot of precipitation, yes, which is great because we had a 4 to 5 year drought in Oklahoma Colorado, Kansas, parts of Nebraska. That's pretty much gone now, which is great. But when you're a snob storm chaser, I guess, like me, when you're looking for everything to be perfect, and there's always something wrong with the setup because of convection or because the system fired too early or there's too many clouds or the timing is a little off or something. That's been in the last 2 years or something, which is, I mean, I'm not going to complain because I'm grateful to see drought go away. But from a personal and green standpoint, it stunk in terms of some supercell. Now, there was a supercell we missed, and that's, I did forget to bring up the fact inside Kansas, Sunday Memorial Day weekend. It happened after dark. That was a quality storm. That one I'm kind of angry about. I don't know if you remember that one or not, Jeff.
Yeah, I'm trying.
Gray, Ford County down in southwest Kansas. But it's a nice cell, primarily after dark. So that one comes to mind for a nice cell in Kansas this year. Then there was Garten County also, but every chaser saw it, and then there's the whole controversy with the sheriff down there. That was back then.
So outside of that, pretty much, has it seemingly been like you said that the last year and a half or so has been pretty what you would consider, unless you get really up close to the tornado, outside of maybe a few abnormal events for this year, that this year has been pretty much what you would call almost a bust for tornadoes?
Yeah, I'd call it mediocre. I wouldn't call it a bust, but mediocre definitely. And a lot of the chasers now are getting more and more, I think they respect nature less than they used to, than maybe like you did 10, 15 years ago when you didn't have these wonderful cell phones that had radar on them because you think you know everything when you have that now, when you're out in the field. And back then, people were more cautious because they didn't have that. And now you have people going, well, I can see where the hook echo is. I can see where I'm at. I'll be just fine if I go just a little closer and look more and closer and closer. And then what they see, well, it still doesn't matter. You're going to have to face it right in the mezzo, which is still very possibly rain ramp to see anything, and you very well still may not see it even in it. So that's kind of the controversy we're going through now. I'll probably get a bunch of people mad at me for saying that, but it's the honest truth. You see that in videos all the time, where it's all these close calls and everything with people like that.
Now, is this because of what because of what happened with El Reno in 2013, when there was a lot of chasers that got in pretty much dangerous positions? Because from what I saw, there was way too many storm chasers, and the tornado was wobbling. And it's like tornadoes do that. I'm sorry, they don't go straight lines. If they were doing that, everybody would be happy and free. But and I saw El Reno, and I'm thinking, no wonder. Now I feel so bad for Tim Samaras, his son, and Carl Young having passed away, along with one other person that was there. But it seemed like this was waiting to happen.
It was, and that was a freak event to make it worse. But people before El Reno were still getting close. It just wasn't acknowledged. You had people in the last few years before El Reno, they were going in like areas like Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, Tennessee, where you don't see cells well, but they were still chasing them. Years ago, you probably had spotters who knew the area who would go there, but they wouldn't chase. Like, they'd just be like, okay, we're going to go by what the radar says and take it easy. As you know, a lot of the storms in the southeast U.S. occur after dark, or they're in lines or clusters.
Yeah.
Obviously, mostly HP, so you're not going to see them. Then oftentimes the stuff in the southeast is quicker moving than out here in the plains, where it can go, instead of like the typical 20 to 40 miles an hour we have in the plains, where the stuff in the southeast goes maybe 35 to 55. And then add the issues at night and the HP and the terrain, it just makes it very tough. So people, and you know, in the olden days, if you read on the old books from the 90s, 80s, they just didn't do the southeast. You might have seen somebody who had a picture of it and stuff, but they were just more spotters or just local people who knew the area. You didn't have a national chaser going from all over the U.S. doing that, except for a very select few. And even then, those guys typically avoided the southeast. They typically did the plains. It's just the growing market. I blame television demand for it. For example, media, while they preach about safety and being safe and doing the right thing and all that stuff, being like people take cover, they're also saying, well, send us photos and video if you can. Well, it's kind of a slippery slope because you're telling people to do one thing and then do another. You get video and footage, so you get the television ratings. And you have more and more people, because we all have cameras and internet now. We just take pictures, and we think every Joe Schmo out there thinks, well, I can go chase now. I have a camera. I've seen them on TV. It's easy. So I'm going to go out there and drive and do it and get it too, even when they do not really know what they're doing because they just see it on TV. They don't do spotter training courses every year. They don't like go with people the first few years and then kind of do it on their own. And like that's how it used to be done. They just do it all at once now. And there's tons of chaser traffic out there too now because there's more chasers too. There's more copiers. In fact, the copiers are more of the problem. The ones who get behind the real chasers. That's the real traffic issues that a lot of people don't know who they are because they're not known. So they criticize the real chasers out there instead of the copiers. So it's a fun world we're in right now.
And from what I saw, because I tweeted this out, this was back Monday during the severe weather we had in Iowa, and I did a thing where I put up the spotter network, and there was all these chasers just all over the place, and I said, how many chasers are there? Too many to count. And I had that retweeted many times from people that it's evident nothing has been learned at all from El Reno, or there's a lot of people that just don't care, and they're going to do it. They don't care what the risk.
Yeah, the dew points said they were just like El Reno. By that I mean, I think El Reno's dew points were somewhere in the mid-70s. I could be wrong, but that sounds about right. Well, Wednesday evening, same setup, dew point wise, not instability wise and shear wise, but dew point wise happened in southern Iowa. People saw the enhance, which is another thing we can go over today if we want. I'd love to cover this one. But people saw the enhance, so all the chasers who had all the free time in the world from all over went to southern Iowa and sat there. Well, that's great if you want to see storms, but you aren't taking into account 75 dew point where you have all that corn, means you're probably not going to see anything. It's common sense, but people don't understand that now. They don't have the grasp of nowcasting now. They go by what the SBC says. They go by because the TV said so. They do this, and they go by because they've seen it on the computer, on YouTube, or they've seen, whatever. You can do this, I can do it. It's that kind of mantra now. And well, granted, I think that's part of the learning process of anything. It's not just done that easy where you snap your finger and go, oh, I'm a chaser now. Yeah, it takes years of really knowing your craft and do it. The best people do anything. They're going to do it for years. They're not just going to start out doing it randomly one day and be the best. I don't know. It's like any profession. And it's not even really a profession anymore. Chasing is more of a hobby. There's very few who make a profession out of it.
And those that do aren't making what they could have or think they would have. It's not a thing to make money.
No, it's not. The people who typically do it probably have another source of income where maybe they can work online, or maybe they're like school teachers or something and they're off for the summer months, or maybe maybe they have a rich spouse or parents. I don't know how that all works, but let me just tell you, there's very few chasers. And there's some. Great thing for all you that do it. There's a few, but there's not a lot that make a full-time living off chasing alone. It's just not possible. It's going to get harder as we go on because of more people with access to selling video now. Because instead of I don't know what the numbers were, but 20 years ago, you had a very limited amount of people who sold video content and all that good stuff to media. Well, now thousands are doing it. So what's that do? Simple supply and demand says you're going to make less money off of it now than then. There's more people out there doing the work for the same amount of content. So.
And that'll thus say, well, to get better video to make more money, You
I
have
have
to
to
get
get
closer.
closer. Yes. Ding, ding, ding. And that's what the whole mantra has started the last 4 or 5 years or so. Does it
And
make it right or wrong? No, it's a free country. Do what you want. That's the beauty of it. But at the same time, do not go crying for pity when you total your car or possibly hurt yourself because you're out there. And please do not hurt others too. That's all I can ask. That's the other stuff. Hey, do as you please, I guess.
and we're not bashing like research people that are actually there to do research and not make money.
No, that's
Because there are research projects ongoing in the plains right now that have virtually nothing to do with severe weather. For example, like the Pecan project, the plains elevated convection or something in convection at night thing. I'm trying to think of it because we discussed that on a Polygon show last summer, and that's ongoing. And they were supposed to be based in Kansas, Nebraska. Well, from what I've heard, they've been in Iowa the last week because everything has been in Iowa this.
yeah, most of the storms have been in Iowa.
Because they don't really want severe weather for their project. They want these big MCSs, and we've been getting those. And it seems like we're getting constant ones. So they're probably thrilled that they're getting these.
I hope they're getting the right data.
Yeah, because that's data that's good because convection at nighttime convection in this area, Kansas City, Iowa, Missouri, Kansas, Nebraska, is a lot of the precipitation we get in the summer. It doesn't come during the day, it comes at night.
And if we didn't get that, we would probably be a desert. And a lot of people don't think of that. They think, oh no, thunderstorms in the forecast. Well, actually, if we didn't get all those MCSs in Nebraska, Iowa, Kansas, Missouri, we'd probably be a desert.
Or something similar to West Texas.
Exactly. Be more like West Texas, Southwest Texas, and all that. Where, of course, they still get rain, but it seems like they get like all their rain in about a 2-week span, and it's dry for like several weeks or months. And they get into their dousing, but here we get more of the constant flow right in the growing season, which is great for corn and agriculture. So that's a lovely thing.
And when you talked about all these chasers coming from all over, and I saw several that I know of that weren't from the Midwest, and I tell you that right now because I knew where some of them were from. And when you think about it, chasing in Iowa, and this has been a mantra for years, chasing in Iowa, oh, tornadoes don't occur there. We need to avoid that state because they never occur there.
Mm-hmm.
And that seems to be a mantra for a lot of chasers, that a lot of chasers do not go to Iowa because nothing happens there. And it's pretty much the same stuff that's been going on this past week. They make these big, huge risks, like enhanced risk. And then what happens? It pours rain and everything is flooding, which happened south of Des Moines this past week on Wednesday, and it's still ongoing. There's still many rivers near from Des Moines south and southeastward that are flooding, and there's roads damaged, which leads to another problem that if they're coming back up here, there's roads that are washed out, bridges that are washed out. So now it's going to be even worse. So it's not going to get better, especially if it's still going to stay saturated. And it's still it rained today a little bit. It's supposed to rain again on Sunday, and then next week it might rain more because we're still stuck in this northwesterly flow, which I might add is not severe weather.
Not tornado season.
It's not tornado unless we can get tornadoes, but they're not as great because the southwest and northeast tornadoes are the best, you could say.
Yeah.
But in Iowa, typically this time of the year, most of the tornadoes come from the northwest.
Mm-hmm.
It always happens in the summer that all tornadoes in Iowa, most of them come from the northwest because that's where the flow typically comes from at the time. If you get it off from the Great Lakes, like we're going to have for the next about week. So and it just seems like every time you'd see, and we discussed this earlier, where it looks like something is going to come together, and it's like, ooh, 5,000 joules and whatnot, and like you said earlier, but there's no cap. So what happens when there's no cap? It gets to about, say, 11 o'clock in the morning or noon, boom, there go the thunderstorms, and then by 2 or 3 o'clock, when you'd expect to see severe weather, what do you see on the radar? A big mass of moderate to heavy rain with embedded thunderstorms, and there's not going to be severe weather.
That's been the trend a lot of this year.
It's been a trend for a lot of years.
Yeah, in the last year also, and another year, but it's been so frequent. 2015, 2014, for whatever reason. I think you can blame El Nino for this year, and that's forecasted to actually get stronger this winter and probably in the next. Well, I don't know how strong it'll be by next spring, but it's forecasted to be a very strong El Nino currently. Now, of course, this can all change, but that would be in the winter. So common sense would say, hello, we're going to be at this again next year. But who knows? I mean, every year is totally different. So
California is hoping for a strong El Nino because they want rain badly.
We're all hoping for it because our food prices can go down supposedly. We know that won't happen even to get the rain and all the food produced.
I mean, and it seems funny that the Midwest is getting just doused with rain. California's on fire. And it's weird, like you'd said earlier, Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska had a 3, 4, 5-year drought. Boom, gone in 1 month. May.
Yep.
Everything, all drought, gone. You went from exceptional drought to nothing in 1 month. In California, if something like you get an El Nino, thank goodness, it might be strong. You get a couple systems coming in and it starts dumping rain. The problem is going to be the ground is so hard as a rock. It's pretty much rock hard now. You're going to get rain. It ain't going to soak in. It's going to run off and you're going to have flooding everywhere. And that's not going to help them either. And I'm thinking that's going to happen this winter in California if they get several systems. It's going to bring a lot of snow to the Sierras. That's going to be helpful. But I just think what's going to end up happening, and I'm going to probably get cranky, that somehow the El Nino, they're going to say, oh, it's going to rain lots in California. Be prepared. And then what will happen? El Nino dies. It goes back to neutral, and nothing happens in California again. I don't think that's going to happen, but it seems like something always screws something up. And the same thing goes for like the severe weather this year, the somewhat lack of tornadoes, at least in Iowa.
Quality tornadoes is what I'll call it, because when you're going to look at the stats, the tornado numbers will actually probably be there. But I'm talking about quality, visible, chasing tornadoes. And there's a difference between that and just nocturnal stuff.
For example, like last year in Iowa, there were 55 tornadoes. Well, how many of them were visible? Or how many of them were actually chaseable? Probably maybe about 7 or 8.
Yeah.
Many of them were rain wrapped or in squall lines. And and one of them we did on our live coverage. You can go back. I might link to that on my Twitter account. The one from last July that Dan Gottschalk, one of our chasers, caught from about 50 yards away. That was, and so many people were on that storm because that was one of the few decent chases in Iowa last year. It was July 6th.
Yeah.
One storm produced one tornado. It was backlit by the sun as it was setting, turned the tornado pink, and you could easily see it for miles, from what I've heard.
Wasn't that thing not even a slight risk?
I can't remember. That was during a period where it was similar to what we have now, where it was just severe weather exactly.
That's the problem with Iowa. You have events every day. You start mixing like what happened up with other days.
Yeah, that's what we were discussing earlier, where I was like, what weather were we talking about, Wednesday or Monday? Because I couldn't tell, because we had so much severe weather, but it's been rain and wind. And the same thing happened last year, but a lot of it was rain, wind, tornadoes. This year it's been rain, wind, and hail, and a few tornadoes, because we've had, luckily for me, I haven't had a hailstorm yet, at least near me. Knock on wood.
You say you get one now.
But
dude, it's your fault.
Yeah, I mean, I just think now that we're nearing the end of the tornado season, it just seems like we may be heading for a record low for tornadoes in Iowa, because I think right now we're only at 7 that I know of.
Really?
We've only had 7 this year.
Wow, I thought it was higher than that.
Nope, 7.
Severe weather.
But
Oklahoma had a high year, but its problem was, and like you spoke about this with Iowa, and I wanted to bring it up. In May, they had all that rain there. Well, a lot of the roads became washed out, and it became unchaseable because of that too.
Yeah.
You get going on. That's another problem when you're chasing. You do not want to get caught on dirt roads where maybe if it's a drier year, you can be a little more risky and take those sometimes. But a year like this year, no, that's just foolish.
Especially in Oklahoma and North Texas. Oklahoma and North Texas, even maybe into Kansas. No, it's been so wet. Now it's been a little bit drier lately, but unfortunately, I think Oklahoma is going to get more rain. Got more rain today. All the lakes are. Everybody in Oklahoma is thrilled, mainly because the stormy weather brought them rain and it filled all the lakes and reservoirs back up. They're like, yay, we had tornadoes, but yay, we got rain. So, but
there were reservoirs in Kansas and Oklahoma that were about 15 to 20 feet below average, and now they are filling up, of course, because of that. So again, it's probably a bad thing. So, it's not a bad thing at all.
But then we can go into the infamous enhanced risk, which seems to be like a bugaboo with Henry and I, and even you when we've all three discussed this. That it seems like every other day there's an enhanced risk, and I think there was one today in I think the Ohio River Valley, and the first thing I think of is, first off, this is what my beef on the IEM bot website. It comes up as slight. It does not come up as enhanced because they haven't put that in yet, and they're not going to do marginal. Marginal is like. The TV people up here don't even mention marginal. They're like, marginal. Who cares about that? So, but when it comes to enhanced, they do put that on there, but they don't do slight, enhanced, moderate, high. They go by the number system. That seemed to be like the best thing they ever did. Was everybody is now starting to go to the number system. The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, here they take out marginal and slight is 1. And it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Which seems to be, I think, where we're heading. We're not heading to this marginal, slight, enhanced stuff. I think we're heading to the number system, which I think I like a lot better than some word that could be construed as something that could be worse than it might be.
No, I think it's confused people a lot this year. We get more hype out of people than we used to get with ordinary slight risk. And for example, this year or last year, I know many chasers who just saw slight risk and they wouldn't even bother to look at the setup. This year they see enhanced, they're like, oh, I need to look at that. I need to go. And
it's the same thing as
there's nothing different
like last year.
Yeah, actual percentages on the severe weather probs, or if it's day one, you can look at tornado, wind, and hail probs. It's still all the same. It's just there's another word in there. They put a little enhanced where there's higher percentages within the slide. There's nothing else different.
And I think that might
that aspect.
And I think that might be why the IEM bot doesn't put enhanced on there, because it's still technically slight from the old days.
Yeah, it is. It's still slight.
So in hindsight, I think people are getting fooled, especially storm chasers out because they see it, but they don't realize why they see it. Because I don't think they really, truly, and they may have, but they may not be, they would see enhanced and they go, woo, something big.
Yeah.
But it's technically the same thing as slight was last year, except there's like, ooh, a hatched area. Well, what's the hatched area for? Oh, hail. Well, then it's not tornado. I mean, if you're going out there to tornado chase, you'd want to see something like a hatched area of tornadoes, which we've seen this year, and that bombed twice. One example, I think it was a week ago or something, I was under a hatched area for tornadoes and a 10%. What happened? Nothing. Why? Because it did exactly what it's done every other time. Storms blew up at noon, it rained all over the place, and it killed the instability. The shear was not as great as was forecast. And Henry and I went completely honest. I think this was a week ago. I don't know. It might have been Monday. I lost track. The hatched area was in Wisconsin. Where were the tornadoes? In Illinois and southern Iowa and Missouri. Oopsie, that's like you're sending everybody to Wisconsin and they're out of position. And that just grinds my gears. I'm taking a Family Guy reference. Because you look at the first outlook at 1 a.m. or whenever, and they say there's going to be severe weather in Iowa and it's going to be nasty. And then by the time you get, and then you're like, ooh, I'm going to start getting in my car, driving if I live in Norman or Wichita, or like you in Kansas City, I'm going to get in the car and drive at 1 a.m. And then you get there at 8 o'clock and all of a sudden the storm risk is now in St. Louis. And there's no risk in Iowa. And then you're pissed off because you just wasted gas driving to where there's no risk. And I have seen that too damn often, where they cry wolf on one place and then it ends up hundreds of miles further away for some reason. And then they try to cover it up. It's like,
that's something that chasers and forecasters in general have to understand more. It's nowcasting in general. You've got to learn that. That's a key thing you must learn. You must observe what is going on now. What's going on in the weather now will be different than at 7 o'clock in the morning tomorrow. It'll be different again at 7. You have to see what is doing that. Now you brought up the whole enhanced thing and how there's no difference with it and slight. So I'm gonna bring up a visual. See this? It's a piece of paper. You rip it in half. Guess what? It's still the same. See?
Yeah.
Now people, this is like another way to put it in perspective is like cutting a 16-inch pie in 4 pieces of 8. It's still the same amount of pie. Well, that's what enhanced is. It's still the same thing as a slight risk as it was previous years. So it's basically just perception. I don't know if it was done for PR purposes or what it was done for, or so people be more aware or what, but that's what it was done for. And I guess it's worked if you want to hype more, but I don't think the educational aspect of people's preparedness level is any better from an enhanced outlook. So yeah,
and the marginal risk makes it even worse, because then it's like, oh, marginal risk, oh lordy, the world's ending. I've seen several times, and there has been some decent severe weather setups with marginal risk, and they end up being like, well, that should have been slight. Because I mean, there's the marginal more or less would say there's going to be some severe weather, but it's not going to be like concentrated. It's going to be like somewhere.
Yeah, the wording is just confusing. It doesn't mean what it really is, or maybe, and that's the problem too. So that's why we should use a number system, like you probably said.
I think they're going to have to go to the number system.
Words just don't make sense to what they're doing.
Yeah.
Communication problem, just like you have these impact warnings, and that's a communication problem too.
And then, because I think what we'll probably, because I noticed that everybody seemed to go to this number system, which I think the Weather Service in Kansas City, I think, came up with. And it seems like it's being copied by everybody up here. Everybody is using the new number system or something similar, where they just lop off marginal and just take slight on. Which
you might be thinking of Wichita. I think they innovated. I don't know if you can ever find this meteorologist, but it's Chance. His name is Chance Hayes. He does the presentation. I think he's the warning coordination meteorologist in Wichita. Years ago, they would issue forecasts, severe weather with like their their county maps. You know, on top of their WCM or whatever it is. You know, I think what they call it. It's CWA.
Yeah, county.
Mixing up my letters. But anyhow, years ago, and this would even go with winter storms too, they would have an impact-based forecast with number like 5 would be severe and red, and then 0 would be nothing. And they'd always have that on every day for every event, no matter what it was. And then like the high and severe weather risk, and ice storms and tornado events would obviously be 5 and red. And they have it outlined by county in their zone. So I wonder if Kansas City maybe copied that from the Wichita office, and now that's going. And I prefer that. That's a more clear, to the point, and it would describe like the impact on people and property, which is what we should be intended to do. This whole marginal, slight, enhanced stuff does not discuss that or imply that. It's just confusing people.
Now, when we talk about Weather Service offices, we're going to have to talk about the bill that was brought up by Senator Thune out of South Dakota about taking the forecasting out of the local offices and merging them into regional offices, going from 122 local offices down to 6 regionals. And so many people were against it. There were some that were for it, or something that were for something similar, but probably not what they came up with. So what do you think of the idea of consolidation of any offices? Henry and I'll say this before I do. Henry and I had gone through all the offices. We went through them one by one, and we found some that could be merged, but we didn't see any way of getting it down to 6. Maybe 90 at most, but not much less than that.
And they're worried about government waste and all that. I'll go a little political here, but there's a lot of other areas you can cut before you cut the National Weather Service. Just my 2 cents, because I think the National Weather Service is one of the most beneficial things out there, and you get more bang for your buck for that than many other governmental run agencies. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, let's get rid of that.
We gotta get rid of I don't know, I'll look up agencies that nobody cares about, but you know it's out there. There's probably a mold agency somewhere. Who knows? No. Or there's probably like a helicopter commission or something.
The thing that pissed me off, and we talked about this, when they were going to regional offices, I'm like, okay, so what's going to happen to the regional headquarters? Central, Southern, Western, and Eastern. Are those going away? First thing and we discussed this when we were talking last week, and I said, well, if they're wanting to get rid of anything, get rid of the regional offices. Why are they needed?
Yeah.
I don't understand.
I don't understand.
That could save money.
Forecast, maybe. I know they do that, but I don't understand the rest. The National Weather Service, no.
And if we're all about consolidation, which I can understand, well, let's look at the Weather Service in Norman. They're in the National Weather Center, which is where the Weather Service in Norman is, the Storm Prediction Center, the National Severe Storms Lab, the University of Oklahoma's Meteorology Department, and I think several other things are there. That's good consolidation. Everything is in one place. You're not having them in 6 or 7 different buildings, having to pay property taxes to the cities or wherever, and putting maintenance on buildings and doing all this other stuff. So that's good consolidation because that saved money. So then I'm thinking, okay, let's look at other offices. Is the National Hurricane Center and the Weather Service of Miami in the same office? From what I gather is I don't think they are, but they better be. That would be good consolidation. And then there's several offices that you look that are too small and that they don't cover enough land area. Either A, give them more counties, or B, consolidate them or start lopping counties off. Because I started going through several in my area where Henry and I went through all of them and said, well, these counties need to be moved to this one, and these counties need to be moved to this one. But it's all about emergency management. About what county emergency management likes what office. Because the first thing we complained about is your Weather Service office, the one in Pleasant Hill, National Weather Service, Kansas City. They cover one strip of Kansas counties before they get lopped into Topeka.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
I don't know why. You can ask them how they did that all when they assigned them years ago.
It just looks pretty shitty.
Well, then the whole deal is, if you look at, I'll have to pull it now in GR3. I don't remember the county's names, but you look at like north central and northeast Missouri. Well, they go clear up to like where Kirksville is, and the radar beam barely hits there from Kansas City.
Yeah, that's a bugaboo.
Which is close to Kansas City. Yeah, that's clear up there, so the radar beam is not accurate too. Although granted, there's no other radar up there either. It's just why aren't they more efficient? Why don't they put the radar somewhere like up north, like KCI, or even somewhere along 35?
But then does that affect the way to the south? Because southeast Kansas already has a slight problem too.
A little bit, but not really, because we still have Tulsa and Springfield and Wichita heading it in Topeka. So I don't think that's going to make too much difference.
And then this bit, because there was this talk about, I think it was Monday, they talked about it, saying, why isn't there a radar in northeast Missouri, say somewhere between Kirksville and Ottumwa? And I'm thinking, damn right. And these are people that aren't even from this area that were saying, why isn't there a radar there?
No, there's a
I'm sorry, we don't have a radar. Nobody cares about Northeast Missouri. Evidently, tornadoes don't occur there. Oh, that's right. There was a Storm Chasers episode where a tornado hit Kirksville, Missouri.
Yeah, right in that.
And the radar beams at 10,000 feet. They were lucky they even caught a tornado warning. That's
real scary. Not so much the daytime stuff there, but the night stuff.
Yeah.
That would be the real scary. And Missouri is prone to nocturnal tornadoes.
Yeah. So even in northern Missouri, the areas around Adair County, which is Kirksville, the thing is, there's nobody living there. The population in Northeast Missouri is very low. Most of the counties have a population of about 10,000 or less, and some have even 5,000 or less. But there are people living there. Are you saying that we can't warn you people? Because even with the radar beam into southeast Iowa is still fairly high. So then you're telling people in Keokuk, population 15,000, Fort Madison, population 12,000, and even Hannibal, Missouri, which is a little closer to St. Louis, and even Lincoln, Illinois, population about 30,000, that, oh, we don't care about you people. Or even Kirksville, which has about 15,000. We don't care about you. You just have to all die because you don't get good radar coverage. It's sad. It makes no sense. But then you have Norman that has like 60,000 radars, and I mean, they cover a whole area, which led to Henry and me bitching. Well, if Norman can cover this many counties, then why can't any other office do that?
I don't know. That's just
either
the government, like we've already discussed, and they're talking about doing more consolidations and all that good stuff. Which, hey, power to them if they improve the Northeast Missouri radar and other areas that are holes too, which there's others, but we just know that area because it's our backyard and it sticks out when you look at
it. Could you see the possibility if you had to merge offices? Could you see Kansas City and say Topeka merging, and maybe lopping off the far southwestern Topeka counties and give them to Wichita?
Something like that, maybe. But they're probably going to keep the radar where it is, and maybe just be like.
Yeah, because nobody is bitching about because that would have been
maybe
radars away is absolutely a no-go.
It wouldn't shock me. What happens is what's happening in the state of Kansas with a lot of their don't run your state like the state of Kansas, but that's a whole other political discussion. But what's going on in Kansas is a lot of state agencies and buildings are consolidating, and a lot of the offices used to be in like a lot of the small towns in central and western Kansas. Well, now they're only in Hays, Salina, Topeka, Wichita, et cetera, et cetera. Now, that's probably what's eventually going to happen with our government too. One, who's going to want to move to Midland, Kansas for a weather job? Nobody, hardly.
Yeah.
So we're going to eventually just retire those people out or move them around and say, okay, well, we'll let you move this to Wichita and you can still work on Northwest Kansas. The only problem with this is who's going to do spotter talks and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
From a personal standpoint. Can it still be done from a computer and forecasting standpoint? Probably so. We're advanced enough now in society and technology to do that. But the whole personal standpoint where, hey, I could see that meteorologist at the street, say, wave at him and say hi, and see him at the grocery store or all that good stuff, and do spotter meetings and all that good stuff. That might be gone, and it'd be sad and unfortunate, but that's just how our society is. It used to be we had, in the Wichita television market, we used to have television stations in western Kansas, for example, like Dodge City, Garden City, Hays, Goodland, Colby, and all that good stuff. Well, now there's none out there. The satellite stations are basically gone. They might have a little small office out there for a reporter to go stay in or something and record something. If there's a story out there, and they probably have like one or two salespeople out there to try to get some ads, but there's no studio there anymore. There's no television production crew out there anymore. And 20, 30 years ago, there was. So we're losing that personal touch with rural areas. It's just a sign of the times where it's all about the dollar and bottom line nowadays. It's not about personal and service, unfortunately.
So since that bill is gone, do you see it possibly coming back again with something new? They came up with a new bill, but it has nothing to do with consolidation, which has to do with communicating stuff to the public. And I'm thinking, well, what's wrong with that? We can't even get the offices to communicate with each other. Because this led to, and I'll let you talk after this, where one office issues something and it goes around the county warning area border, and you have these weird polygons that are so screwed up. And it's like, okay, well, and this is what Ryan Hanrahan up in Hartford, who's a meteorologist at NBC Connecticut, said, that this is a problem where you have warnings being issued that butt up against county warning area boundaries, and they look terrible. And I'm thinking, well, that's all well and fine, but with 6 regional offices, the same thing is going to happen depending on where the regions are based. Because you're not going to tell me they're just going to take the whole plains and make them one big area, and then there's not going to be severe weather. It's going to butt up against another area.
It's always going to be that unless you have one whole office, period.
Yeah, and that's never going to happen.
So, good luck with that one.
Now, I thought of this before we started. Would there be a way, and you might maybe know this, could there be a way if, say, let's, for example, say Topeka issues a warning that butts up against Kansas City's office? Would there be a way for them to issue the warning that goes into Kansas City's thing, even though it gets cut off because of the boundary on the software, that then that warning continues into Kansas City's office? That warning is sent to Kansas City for them to then verify that they'll want to issue it, and then they can send it along with Topeka's, and they're both done at the same time, but done from both offices. But you would have to have communication.
From a communication standpoint, so you don't have like these strange warnings where you have like just strange drawings and like outlines of warnings because of the CWA.
Especially rivers that seem to be county warning area boundaries really badly.
That's where state lines and counties are divided many times. That makes it fun.
Because I think if that was something that needs to be done, because if Topeka, for example, I'm using an example for Topeka and Kansas City because that would probably be a good example, even though the boundary is great. But I mean, there's something where you could have 2 offices working on one warning. That would actually save money somehow, because you have 2 forecasters in 2 offices working on stuff. So then it'd be like a transferring from one office to the other. So then you're not wondering, well, this office, Topeka, oh, is Kansas City going to issue a warning? Maybe we shouldn't. Or Kansas City says,
right on the river, on the east side of the river where Kansas City covers, and you're like going, okay, I see a tornado warning for Brown County, not in Doniphan County. I'm just sitting here waiting. Do you think that office is going to pull the trigger or not? It's frustrating from my standpoint. I don't know how other people feel about it.
Now, given the fact that you work at Weather 2020, which is run by Gary Lezak, who works in television, does he have, and you've talked to him numerous times, does he complain a lot about this, the Topeka, Kansas City?
No, but I could go over a whole topic with you, which will lead to minutes, which people appreciate, that many meteorologists I know go through, and that's the battle of the severe thunderstorm warning. By that I mean they issue them constantly, and nobody takes them seriously. And it requires a bunch of work on all meteorologists, and people who issue it, and the people who have to broadcast it, and all that good stuff, and emergency managers. Well, they're issued all the time now, and that's a problem because people don't take them seriously. They're just thinking, oh, it's just another summer severe storm. Well, here's the problem. You can have nickel-sized hail be warned for the exact same way 120 mile-an-hour wind gust is. And
yeah,
that's a big-time communication problem, again, that we really have never addressed. We have a PDS thunderstorm watches and all that.
Which are very rarely issued.
They're very rarely issued, as you said, like you said, but they happen. And I've always wondered, should we go with something like another elevated or some other different kind of severe thunderstorm so we can really have the storms that are going to really destroy and possibly kill people versus the ones that are more of just a nuisance out there?
Like the storms Monday morning in Iowa, which had winds to 90 to 100 miles an hour.
It's so much different than a thunderstorm with nickel hail, and that's it. So,
which that storm, I think, had very little hail. It was all wind.
Yeah.
And
that's a big thing that we're going through now, meteorologists are going through now, because it's the cry wolf syndrome. You go through I would guess just where I live alone and where I've been, of course, it depends on the year, but I would guess I go through about 12 thunderstorm warnings a year. Well, who cares? You know, you've been through them all. Nothing ever really happens. So you're going to eventually get that one with the 120 mile-an-hour wind gusts and go, there was no warning, or why didn't they go tornado warning or whatever? Well, it wasn't a tornado. So maybe we need to do with like a number system for warnings too. Maybe we just advise like a lot of thunderstorm warnings would just be like ones or something where you don't take them. I mean, you should acknowledge they're there, but you know, just go about your daily business. You're sitting inside your office.
Go inside to a point. You don't want to be like outside, like, oh, a thunderstorm warning, let's go play. I don't want to do that.
Probably do anymore because the communication is that poor with it. So we need to come up with a new system for severe thunderstorm warnings, in my opinion, because I think that is long broken.
Yeah, because and I bring this up a lot on the show because John, you've listened to the show several times. When I bring up June 30th last year, where I had a warning here, where I'm living in Anamosa, and the storm brought what I would consider, they never estimated what the wind was here, but it was at least 90 to 100 miles an hour. And they issued a severe thunderstorm warning. Well, like you said, nobody pays attention to those. But the thing was, it was a small line. There was a tornado watch or something or other. There were several tornado warnings. There was thunderstorm warnings all over the place. Stormy, stormy, stormy. People, the storm came in, blew 30% of the trees over. So we lost 30% of the trees in town. My parents' house, as I was there at the time the storm came in, didn't lose any trees, but we lost a tree in the backyard that was in our neighbor's yard. There were tree limbs everywhere. I had to clean that up for at least a day and a half. My parents had no power for a day and a half. I had power that night where I live because we have no trees here because all our power lines on my side of town are below ground. So we had power that night. But I had no internet, no phone, no cable, and no cell service. So, but storms like that, they will do destruction, and people say, "Oh, it was a tornado." No, it wasn't. Even though I think it may have been a mezzo trying to form a tornado that never did, because the wind was coming out of two different directions, south and then west. We had the south wind because my entire parents' house, which faces north-south, their south-facing siding was just caked with leaves from the south. And then the south wind, the inflow came in at about 50, and then it immediately switched to west at about 90 to 95, and all the trees fell almost completely flat. And I had never seen that before in my lifetime. And I've been through windstorms, but I had never seen something like that. The only time I'd ever seen that was hurricanes. And then there's the people that say, well, we shouldn't use hurricane force winds because that's overused term. Well, it is in areas that get hurricanes, but we don't get hurricanes here. We get remnants, and remnants don't do anything except dump rain and flood everything. For example, Bill, a week or 2 weeks ago, dumped rain everywhere, just not here. In Missouri and Illinois and the Ohio River Valley. That's what happens with remnants here. We don't get the wind. You have to describe it like something that you don't get, like a hurricane or even tornado. I've heard them say tornado-like winds before. Well, tornado-like winds spin. Well, you have to say it'll be like a tornado. It's going to do as much damage, if not more, because straight-line winds will do a heck of a lot more damage. It could take a whole field of corn or soybeans or wheat or whatnot and just completely destroy it. What is a tornado going to do? It may destroy, 10 or 20% of your crop?
Small part of it,
yeah. Destroy the whole thing. It'll flatten it all. So that's a good analogy that I use. Tornado will destroy a little bit. Wind will take everything, and more in hindsight.
An analogy I like too with people, I don't remember who brought it up now. It might have been Mark Ogner or somebody who's been on here before, but I'm not sure. It could have been anybody because I've been watching this weather stuff for so long. But a good analogy I like is, what's it matter if it's blowing circular or straight line? If it's like 100 miles an hour more, it's going to do damage either way, so you might as well prepare for it. When it comes to severe thunderstorm winds or tornado winds, and people just hear tornado and they freak out. Well, there's some tornadoes out there, and this is something we need to emphasize to people too. There's many tornadoes out there that are very weak. You could survive in them just standing in them. Now, I'm not suggesting you go out there and stand in them, but you could because they're so weak.
Yeah.
But we never hear that. You think tornado, you think you get like these horrible images in your mind of things like Joplin, Greensburg, Parkersburg, etc.
More El Reno, yeah. Where
those are exceptions. Those are the 1%ers. The other 60% are relatively weak, and then the other 35 to 40% are something kind of in between, maybe.
Moderate, like EF1s and 2s.
Yeah, we need to educate the people on this so they don't freak out every time there's a tornado. Just take action. You'll probably be fine because odds are it's going to be weaker and it's not going to lift your foundation up and all that good stuff that everybody thinks every time they hear the word tornado.
Yeah, for example, and I'll bring this up, the tornado that occurred in Albia on Monday was an EF3. Except in the town of Albia, the damage was EF1, but it was EF3 further to the northwest. That was the first what would be considered, quote, strong tornado in Iowa in 2 years. Because all the tornadoes last year in Iowa were 0s, 1s, and 2s. Yeah. And we only had, I think, 3 or 4 2s. The rest were 1s and 0s. Yeah. But some of them, like the one that I talked about with Dan Gottschalk's video of the second Traer tornado. It's known as the second Traer tornado because Traer got hit by a tornado a week before. The same day, June 30th, the day I had the big wind event, Traer had a tornado that day. The second one was a week later. In fact, it was not even a week later, and it went north of town. That was an EF1. Well, that has video of that tornado taking trees and throwing them into the air full, and it was an EF1. And that's like, oh my gosh. And I thought when I saw that first, I was like, oh my gosh, that's like a big tornado. It ripped trees up. Well, the thing was, the trees were fairly weak to begin with because those are type windbreaker trees that tend to want to blow down anyway. They come up, windbreaker trees grow so fast, but they tend to just blow over so easily, so they can get ripped up and flung into the air, so it makes it look like, oh my gosh, it's blowing up trees. Well, what type of tree is it? Well, a type of windbreaker tree. Well, then that's not anything new. Now, if it was like a walnut tree or an oak tree, then I'd be concerned, but it wasn't. But it just is like, woo, it's the perception. You see a tree. Oh, my gosh. What type of tree was it? If there's an oak tree, I'd be freaked out. If it's one of those windbreaker trees, it tends to just get ripped up. And that would be the case for any straight line wind. Those type of things will blow down even if
any difference too is how wet are the soils or how dry.
Yeah, and it was wet because that storm, with all those trees being flung, that was toward the end of about a 3-week period where it was just severe weather, like every 2 or 3 days. And I think that was, the big finale, right? At that point, because I can't remember anything after that. Maybe one event that I can remember, but nothing after that. So
the same can be said, and this is something I want to bring up too when it comes to tornado damage, especially in poor areas like the Southeast. You have your well-built structures, like in certain areas of the country. Then you have your shacks that are out there. Well, if you see a building destroyed, you need to know how strong or sturdy was the structure to begin with that was destroyed. Because in EO0, if you flatten that thing, while if it hit a regular well-built structure, it's not going to do anything to it. So, yeah, perception.
Yeah, and there's too many people that think, oh my gosh. For example, there was the tornado in Sand Springs, Oklahoma, that one outside Tulsa that was in March. Mm-hmm. And what did it hit? It hit a trailer park.
Yeah.
As if that's anything new. It seems like they'll say, well, there's the theory that tornadoes go to trailer parks. No, they just happen to hit them.
I just hit them easier because they're easier to fling around. Just like any wind can fling around a smaller object. It's easier for me to pick up this than it is to throw a big brick and throw it around.
Yeah, and the thing was, because I saw the damage from that, and I was like, okay, what is this? It looks like a trailer park. Okay, some of the trailers were still standing straight up. Some were flattened, and some were destroyed. So I'm thinking, okay, it's not a bad tornado, but it's not a good tornado. So I thought it was probably at least a 2 or a 3, which I think it was a 3. Because my perception was I knew what it was. They said, what is this? It looks like a trailer park. And I saw some were still standing. So I was like, okay, it's not the big EF4 or 5 that they were all freaking out about, but it's not a weak tornado either because it was fairly wide. But then that brings up another perception problem. There's people in this country, namely people in Oklahoma City, that see a tornado and say, "Ooh, it's an EF3."
Yeah.
"Ooh, it's an EF4." And I saw that. I won't mention
that before there's any damage whatsoever done. They look at the radar images only and guess the ESPL damage, which of course is impossible to do.
And I've seen, and I'm seeing this more watching Oklahoma City television when I watch live coverage there, where they start numbering the tornadoes, and some of the time they're right. They get it perfectly right. Other times they're just going completely insane and saying it's like a damaging tornado. For example, Bridge Creek, another town that seems to get hit by tornadoes. They were hit by the Moore, Oklahoma tornado in 1999, which is known as the Bridge Creek Moore tornado. But Bridge Creek got a tornado this year, May 6th. They were saying, "Oh, it's an EF4." It was a 3, if I remember right.
The only way I'll give somebody accountability on that is if they're flying a chopper and they have a degreed meteorologist or somebody who's really well with damage assessment and they see that damage and they know it from that. Outside that, looking at a radar image or not seeing the damage, don't say it.
Yeah, and they did lower it because they had people looking at the damage almost right after the tornado hit, and they said the damage was pretty much, and then they started assessing the damage. And when they started assessing the damage, every single person I heard on several stations got it right. 2, maybe a low end 3. And that was about right. Highway signs snapped. Well, those will snap in about an EF. And trees and a lot of the buildings that were destroyed were barns, metal sheds. Those things will go in an EF, maybe a low end EF2 or a high end EF1. So I'm thinking, yeah, but look what it's hitting. It's not hitting like a major, big, well-constructed house. And some of the ones they were showing that were well-constructed had damage, but it wasn't like so maybe pieces of the roof were gone or something like that. It wasn't like you see this metal shed and it's completely like across the street. But that...
And here you can give me another personal rant of mine. They always say this tornado was an EF3. Well, no, maybe it wasn't an EF3 its entire life cycle. It was at a certain point. But the other parts, it was weaker. And that's something else people don't take into accountability. So it's another perception problem we have. They think, oh, EF3 the entire time. No, it wasn't. Varied in strength on its path and where it was. So.
Similar to the Albia tornado on Monday, and this fooled me and it fooled the media, where the Weather Service in Des Moines on Tuesday posted EF3 damage, or they posted EF1 damage from Albia to near Drakesville. Off and on, up and down. It was pretty much bouncing up and down. But then they posted EF3 tornado damage from Columbia, which is unincorporated, in southern Marion County to Albia. So I'm thinking, oh, 2 tornadoes. No, it was the same tornado. And so what happened was I posted it was 2 tornadoes. KCCI in Des Moines posted it was 2 tornadoes. A bunch of people in my area and on Twitter posted it was 2 tornadoes. And then the Weather Service said, oh, it's 1. I'm like, thinking, God, can you be so stupid? Why did you do that? Stupid.
That's something the weather has to do better.
And it ended up being an EF3, which of course it was only EF3 in one place. Northwest of Albia, where if you look at the rotation, it was a good 100 knots of shear, easily. It was one of the best I had seen all year and maybe even 2 years. And when it got from Albia to the south and east, it was a much weaker. And that's where it was only EF1 and it was kind of going up and down. Well, now everybody's going to say, well, I got hit by an EF3. And people in Albia will say, well, the Hy-Vee store that got hit was hit by an EF3. No, it was hit by an EF1. It was an EF1 at the time. It was much weaker, even though the store pretty much got destroyed. But
just like people who say
they lost a wall, but that's about all they lost.
This isn't tornado related, but this is still storm related. Let's say somebody got hit by Hurricane Katrina. And, of course, it was a terrible hurricane, so they think worst case. Well, maybe they were in Arkansas or something. They only got rain from it. They still got hit by Hurricane Katrina. So it's just a perception thing, and
You could say the same thing about it. Rain, you got rain from Tropical Storm Bill.
exactly.
I mean, I could say that about, God, what was the hurricane? Blanca, the Eastern Pacific Hurricane Blanca that came up and it started. That's what started the rain here the early part of this month, where Blanca, I think it was this month. I don't remember, but Blanca came up, the remnants, and it just came into the Midwest and it just started just dumping rain all over the place.
Yeah,
And
they
I'm
don't call
like,
it.
well, I got hit by Hurricane Blanca. No, you got hit by the remnants of it.
Yeah.
And that's the case, and that would be the case with El Niños. Going back to this, we're going to probably get more remnants from Eastern Pacific hurricanes, not Atlantic. Yes, Bill came into Texas, and it slowly went through the country, and it was still tropical all the way to Ohio, which made no absolute sense.
Sometimes these El Nino years actually have more Gulf of Mexico wet systems than La Nina.
Yeah, like Bill. Bill was considered
the Atlantic Basin kind of quiet, man, on these El Nino years. So.
Yeah, and I don't see any tropical activity for the next probably weeks at this rate.
Yeah, there was nothing on the
There's too much desert sand up and stuff in the Saharan dust layer. It's not happening. And that's led to something I saw today where it says Puerto Rico is heading into a bad drought. And a lot of the Caribbean is going into a drought because it ain't raining. It's like, yay, that means you better go and take a vacation to the Caribbean because there's no rain there.
Exactly. Now's the time you do it because people are going to think hurricane season better avoid. Well, this year probably fine.
Yeah.
That's where knowing the weather and knowing the situation always helps. The same with nowcasting. Knowing the weather and knowing the situation.
Yeah.
Situational awareness, as we like to call it. Beautiful thing.
So then we have to talk about this new show that's going to be on TBS. The first thing I'd ask is, did you know about it beforehand? And if you did, why didn't you send a video in to be on it?
I don't want to be on it for one.
Well, why not?
I don't know if I knew about it beforehand or not. I don't think I did. I think I saw about what you did. I think I saw it on like TV Spy or something.
I saw about something about it in January when they were doing the auditions, but I just saw blurbs and it was kind of not talked about because I saw nothing about it on Twitter or Facebook or nothing. It wasn't until I think it was yesterday or the day before where it was posted that they on every website that it had been bought. The show was already done. It's already been produced, done, and over with. Because I found out it was done in April and May from somebody that it was on it, which is I found that out from somebody. I think it was Michelle Rotella who was on the show. She's one of the contestants. That she was on it, and she had to be off. Everybody had to be off the grid pretty much because they couldn't talk about it. And now they can because it's been announced, but they can't tell you who won. Of course, they can't tell you who won because if you see whoever won on the CNN show, well, then that defeats the purpose of watching. So that's probably not going to happen until the show is over.
Yeah.
But what do you think about this? And because what do you think about this show?
I didn't look too much into it, but I'll just tell you this: it's reality television. That means it was done cheap. And it's probably a stupid idea, and it probably won't last long. So, and they'll probably have made-up drama like all reality shows, and it'll probably be 3/4 fake, like most of them are. Some are 100% fake.
Now, I found the cast list. I found that on, I think it was TV Spy. I think I found it on. And there's several people that have meteorology degrees, and at least one or I think it was a handful of people that actually are in TV. So the first thing I'm thinking of is
why they get off for their jobs for that long to do it.
Yeah, and the first thing I thought of is, at first I thought, are these people going to, except for the people that don't have a degree, because I could have been on this show, and I don't have a degree.
Yeah.
I mean, I tried to get one, but calculus killed me. I could have been on it. They have people that had degrees in something similar or something even crazy. Many of them had degrees. I think all all the contestants had college education. I'm thinking, oh boy, this is going to be a disaster, and it's supposed to be comedic. So the first thing I'm thinking of is, oh boy, now they're making weather people look like Brick Tamlin from Anchorman.
And unfortunately, that's the national perception when you get out of the Midwest, is weather people are more funny and non-serious personalities who don't know anything, who always get the forecast wrong and aren't scientists.
And then this leads me
perception even more
to the panel, to the judges they have, because I looked this up. One of them is Jillian Barbery, who used to do the weather stuff for Fox NFL Sunday.
Wow.
She was on Good Day LA on KTTV in Los Angeles for many years. She would she's okay. Doesn't have a degree in weather, but she in Southern California you don't have to know anything. You just have to
look good.
Sunny in 85.
You just have to look good, be on TV.
And the other person was Johnny Mountain, who is very famous in Los Angeles television weather. And he actually...
They went with Los Angeles-based personalities. How to appease people like us, they should have had people like James Spann or Gary England or whatever be judges. That would have been entertaining, wouldn't it?
The interesting thing about Johnny Mountain, though, is his entire career was not in LA. His career started in Chicago. Chicago is not a place where you can just fool around.
No.
Weather in Chicago is much more exciting than Los Angeles. Except this winter could be interesting because they may actually have to talk about rain. And all I hear when I see people in LA, weather people in LA, anytime it rains, they're like, oh my God, the world is ending. It's sprinkling at the Civic Center in LA.
Yeah,
there's going to be car accidents. Everything's going to die. They freak out about a tenth of the
rain,
like the world.
Basically, they react to rain like much of the country does to snow, the first snow of the year.
And it seems like in LA, it rains a half an inch of rain, and all of a sudden, everything is flooding. And most of their stuff is flood controlled. The LA River, most of the Los Angeles River is canaled. Only a part near, from what I can remember, up in the northern part, well north of Hollywood, where it's kind of a slight canal, but it's kind of not. That's the only part that's not really controllable. Everything else is those big cement canals. Almost all the rivers down there are. And I thought, well, I've never seen the rivers there flood, at least the times I've been there. I was there in 2009 and 2010. The first time I was there was in September. There were some forest fires taking place in LA, just northeast LA, which I could see. The interesting thing about that is I went on with my parents, and I went on and this is off topic, I went on a ferry out to Catalina Island, which is, 30 miles off the coast. And I took a picture from, I think it was from the pier at Catalina Island in Avalon, looking northeast, and you could see the fire. The smoke. It was kind of a haze, but you could see it. And I have it somewhere. I'm not going to look for it. But I was like, wow, that's interesting. I'd never seen a forest fire. And I actually drove past it up close, not close like, oh my gosh, I see the flames, but within reason that you could actually see the smoke and you know there was a fire. And that was the first time I'd ever seen that. But of course, with the forest fire, there's no rivers flooding.
No.
Now, February. The following February, that was September 2009. February 2010, I was there with my father. And God, it was cold. But it wasn't flooding then either. And I'm thinking, well, outside of this, the only reason these were canaled was because of a flood that took place before they were canaled, and everything flooded, and almost all of Los Angeles floated away. So they canaled everything. So now it seems like once you do something, then nothing happens. Except now it probably will. But it has happened before, but
it's like Wichita has this big ditch around their town, which prevents most flooding now. It used to flood downtown there all the time before they had it built. Pretty impressive project. And they call it Big Ditch, literally.
And then speaking of LA people, since we're on this because the judges are going to be on this show that's already taken place. There was, oh gosh, it was a tornado. I think it was this. Yeah, it was this past winter. I'm sure you remember it. The tornado video where the guy shows the tornado going by his house, and you see things flying into the air, and the roof goes flying of the roof next to him, and he says, "Oh, bleep, bleep, bleep." And the first thing I thought of is, okay, a tornado's on the ground in LA because the video was taken in Los Angeles. And the first person I saw was what's his face? Dallas Raines, who's at KABC. He immediately said, "Oh, it's a tornado." Well, no kidding. And they confirmed it. And he actually said it was a weak tornado, which it was. And the first thing I thought of is, Dallas Raines knows tornadoes? I thought Dallas Raines only knows how to look good and just pretend to know the weather. Because
unfortunately, they're going to have to learn it at some point, no matter where you're at.
Because the interesting thing is, if you go back, Dallas Raines used to be in Atlanta way back when TBS used to have their own newscasts, when it was still called WTBS in Atlanta. They had newscasts, and Dallas Raines was the weather guy until LA. So you're thinking, well, he must know something. He must not be just people in LA are not just all pretty looking faces, like we've heard one person that's been a former guest think that people on the coast, specifically the West Coast, are just all pretty people that just are there to look beautiful and just point at a map and say 80 degrees.
Well, that's probably their main purpose, unfortunately. But they should know weather on the side if they're going to play like it.
So then when you think about these contestants, are you thinking, because I'm thinking it's
a typical reality show, which has very little to do with meteorology and weather and has to do with drama and infighting, like every reality show.
Similar to, let's say, Storm Chasers?
Yep, similar to that, similar to any reality show you've watched that has all that. The reality show usually actually isn't based on the setting and what they do. It's based on the storylines, the people, and the drama.
So what I heard, and I'm just basing off of what I've been seeing, that supposedly there's going to be challenges. I'd love to see what this is.
I know how they could do it. They could be like, here, go cover Oklahoma City's television market, moderate risk. Go. That would be. I don't
know what the challenges are. So this makes me want to watch to see this because this is going to be horrible. But when it's from the Funny or Die people, I'm thinking, okay, they're trying to make a mockery of weather. And then you wonder why, and this goes back to Senator Thune again, why Senator Thune decided to bring up the Weather Service. Let's consolidate it, because this stupid show is coming up saying, well, all weather people are stupid and dumb. It's like.
Or they think to privatize and let these people be our privatized people running it. Isn't that a scary thought, too?
Do you think that, and I saw this where it says this is season 1. So it's almost like they're saying there's going to be another season of this.
Yeah, they don't know. They don't even know what the ratings are for it. If it bombs, they're not doing it again.
Yeah, if it does, and we don't know. But what I saw is a lot of I know Ginger Z hates it already. She is absolutely horrified. She hates it.
That's not a good sign. Yeah.
And from what I saw from a few of the contestants that I saw that I was able to look up, that several of them are smart and should be in better places than they are. And they're only trying to get into a better place to be on a TV show. Yeah. Well, it makes me think, and this is my opinion, I don't know if you'd share it or not, that, and I even said this to another person, that this could end up backfiring in all the contestants' face, that they could end up being blackballed and never get a job in meteorology ever.
Yeah, it depends how the show is perceived. If it's perceived okay, hey, it might be good exposure, they might be well, but if it's perceived as a stain on the meteorology community, yeah, they might have shot themselves. at
Yeah.
least in that career field.
Depending on how well they do, some of them may actually do well. But some of them probably, I think most of them, outside maybe about 2 or 3 of them that I kind of think have a decent shot of not being hurt by this too badly. I think all outside of those 2 or 3, I think this is pretty much their death knell.
Yeah.
If they ever wanted to get a job in television, even if it's not even outside. Now, one person I know already has a TV job and it's not in weather, and I don't think that's going to hurt them. They're just going to go back to their TV job they have. It's not going to hurt them. But anybody who actually has a meteorology degree, and at least I think half or slightly over half do, that's really going to hurt them. And it might hurt them not only in the public sector, meaning TV, could hurt them in the private sector, like AccuWeather. Don't even expect the Weather Channel. Oh, wait, never mind. The Weather Channel will hire anybody. They'll hire people who don't even have degrees. But
They're an all-roper. That says enough.
But I'm thinking TV is probably, if it's depending on how well they do, if they just completely fuck up, and I'm sorry I'm using bad words, but if they just completely screw it all up, that's going to kill them. But if somebody sees something in them, they might give them a try, even if they want to take a chance. There's some people that will. But
I don't blame them for taking the risk for one reason. There's so many people with meteorology degrees right now who are not employed. So this is why they're doing that. Because there's so few jobs right now in the meteorology field. So they're trying to make it big with that. They were themselves, so be it, because they probably weren't going to get a job anyway.
And a few of them already had jobs, and I'm thinking
that's risky.
And I'm thinking that's what's really hurtful, because there's some people that actually have jobs in the industry, and they could be risking their jobs by screwing around on this show. And what are they going to do? Go and sue them? I'd love to see that, because then we're probably
in their contract.
Talk about that.
Yeah, it's probably in their contract not to make fools out of themselves, and if they do, there's grounds for dismissal every TV station.
But then But then this leads me to the belief, on a TV show where it's reality, they want to make people look stupid and make them look like they're making fools of themselves. They could edit it to make it look like that they're totally stupid and don't know what they're doing. They might take all the good stuff that they did out, and the stuff that they did not very good to make laughs and go, ha 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 ha, because that's what they do. They're there to make people laugh. They're not there to make people go, here's a tornado warning. Ooh, exciting. Nobody wants to hear about a tornado warning. They want to hear them.
The product is when the show actually comes out. But
yeah, I might have to watch it just to see how wacky this is. But right now, about it. But I think it's a wait and see on this right now, on that show, because it's just really.
When you speak about reality shows and weather, I think of Storm Chasers in the first few years, it was a pretty solid show. But the last year, they over-edited it and had so much drama and junk in it.
You know why the first season was so good? Reed Timmer wasn't on it.
Oh, yeah, that.
The minute Reed Timmer was added, and I'm not going to bash Reed, but the minute he was added, it started to get hyped, and all of a sudden, it went from poor Tim Samaras, God bless him, rest in peace, and it went from him and Sean Casey, and it went to Reed Timmer, and by the end of the last season, it was all Reed Timmer.
It's all Reed. So it
was all Reed all the time. And then Reed, when that show ended, Reed started his own.
Yeah.
And it's not the same thing. And the thing is, and I might go on to this, because we still have time. It's only been an hour and a half. But with Reed supposedly going to get married, and his soon-to-be wife works in New York, is Reed Timmer even going to stay in Oklahoma? And I think the answer to that is no. Because he's not going to move to Oklahoma City, and he's not.
The year he'll be in New York, and the other 2 he'll try to chase. Or
I think it's going to be that he'll live in New York, because he's never home anyway. Even if it's not in a tornadoes chase season, he's never home. Might as well be in New York. So I could see them maybe buying a condo or an apartment type thing in Oklahoma City that they live there 2 months of the year, and then they go chasing then, and then they live in New York the rest of the time. Because she, if they get married, we're not sure when that's going to be, that they're going to probably do that and live in New York because what does Reed have? Reed has TVN. And that's like, how much money does that make compared to what she makes? I think she works at Fox News. So
he's doing better, but it's hard to say.
Yeah. I didn't want to go into that, but that kind of went into that because of Storm Chasers and whatnot. But the first thing I thought of is the Weather Channel is probably kicking themselves because they didn't come up with this idea first.
Oh yeah, I'm shocked they didn't.
You know the first thing I thought of is when Weather Channel was on all this stuff about big guys in the woods and all this other stuff that's on, thinking, well, why didn't they come up with reality programming? Their reality programming is more on the thing of stupid people doing stupid stuff. So
unfortunately, that's what reality TV is, and when you agree to it, that's the risk that you're probably going to do. Even if you don't act stupid, they may edit it to make you look stupid. They have the right to do it because you signed a contract that said they could. And that's probably why I'm not that big of a fan of most reality programming.
Yeah, and I mean, I thought of shows like, say, this or Weather Brains or all these other shows. These are like, you can consider this to be reality, but it's more common sense reality than watching Kardashians or Big Guys in the Woods or any other thing that's on, like 19 Kids with the crazy people.
Oh, yeah.
That type of stuff everybody loves, but then when they do something happens, then everybody is all pissy and angry. I mean, like, we're kind of going off topic, but we're kind of going into reality programming. The same thing goes for weather reality and all this other stuff. Like, oh, look, this tornado hit Joplin, and we're going to talk to 6,000 people that were affected or something.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean,
it's all about now is finding people with short attention spans and then getting them caught with that. Because if you actually have a program that probably has some intelligence and thought to it, it's probably not going to last now because we have an ADD society now.
Yeah, everything, and that is the case with. I want to know the forecast right now. I don't want to wait till 10 o'clock.
Exactly. That's why local news is going to have issues or have to be more of a now thing or online deal or app deal.
And that would lead to the possibility of, say, some TV people, for example, like Gary Lezak or Brian Busby or anybody in Kansas City, Topeka, Wichita, wherever, that could end up losing their jobs because the big macho business people will say, well, we can just do it online.
Possible, but there's one field that people still like for now, but it could change. People want a personal approach to a forecast. Yeah,
because you always want to, because getting something
especially during severe weather. Now the problem is how are you going to get these people to watch you when it's 77 and clear for a week?
Because they're not, especially in the summer.
Yeah, that's the hardest.
Kansas City, you could go 10, 12, 14 days when it's sunny and 90-something degrees, and it rains maybe once in that 2-week period, and it's not severe.
Pretty hard to talk about then. That's when you go in local news and you try to find like other stories or talk about the local sports team. But the problem is generally they don't broadcast the local sports. The cable network does, and that stuff you can all look up online. So local media has a struggle now with that kind of stuff.
Especially in even smaller markets. The large markets, like yours in Kansas City, at least you have a football team, a baseball team that's actually very good, and a soccer team, and et cetera, et cetera. But
you got
smaller markets, it's very difficult.
Like Casper, Wyoming, and you have no weather. What are you going to talk about? Like the
that's where you have people that may not know what you're talking about.
A cute cat with like a pink tail or something because there's nothing else to report.
And that leads to the problem of why people would want to go into it, because they're not going to say you're going to graduate from, say, college at, say, Mississippi State or Oklahoma or wherever, and you're going to say, well, I want to go to where the weather action is. Well, that's not where the jobs are. The jobs are in places where nothing happens.
The jobs are going to be in like a small town in Wyoming or Montana to start out with, where you might.
Montana can have interesting weather in the winter with no blizzards, but that's about all.
my point is you're going to be moving in the middle of nowhere, not getting great pay, and probably working very lousy hours.
I think you'd work lousy
It's
hours
not
in
going to be
any job
cheap in
anywhere.
a small station like that. Usually you're going to have to start on weekends or mornings and possibly doing reporting and other things too.
Yeah, and the thing is, if you're lucky enough to get a job in a decent market, say the size of mine, which is number 90, a lot of several of the meteorologists in my market actually started their career in this market, and they're still here.
Helps when you become known in the market and can build trust and loyalty if it's possible.
So it's
Just like anything. Like, for example, a doctor could be the same way. You could be a doctor and start out in a small town and then move in advance, or if you're lucky enough, maybe you start in a market and just establish yourself. And then there's the whole personal approach. That's kind of like why I think of on-air meteorologists kind of as doctors. You can still look up everything on WebMD or whatever, but you're probably going to want a personal approach for those more serious things and do it with somebody who's been established and around and somebody you know for a while.
yeah.
I think of local TV personalities and weather forecasting. It's the same thing.
Yeah. So outside of all that stuff, what else is there to discuss before we start going off topic farther?
Not sure.
I don't. I know. Has anybody in Kansas City been fired in meteorology yet?
Ever? Or what?
No, lately. I'm trying to think.
I can think of.
Year has been.
Katie Horner was, I don't know how that all went. I think her contract was not removed. That was about 4 years ago now. That all
And she went to St. Louis. She was at what?
Now she runs a plumbing and business, I think, based out of North Kansas City, and she's in like real estate maybe also.
I thought she ended up in St. Louis.
She did for a while, but she
and then what was it? The fact that she went to KMOV and then KMOV was bought by Meredith, and I think she was at KCTV, which was Meredith's station, and that's how she.
Maybe, I'm not sure.
Something like that, because your stations that the ones that are in your market are owned by Hearst, Scripps, and Meredith.
Tribune's now Fox 4 because they've changed a bunch of owners for the last several years.
Yeah, Fox 4 is owned by the Tribune, right? Yeah.
Yeah, owned by Tribune. Yeah,
Tribune, Hearst, Meredith, and Scripps.
Yeah.
So pretty much outside of Meredith, which is the magazine company, publishing company, the other three are pretty much what used to be newspaper companies.
Mm-hmm. Which are all struggling too.
And which is the reason why Gannett is splitting into Gannett, which will be the newspaper, which I don't see why they're getting rid of their cash cow, which is TV still. And that's going to become Tegna or whatever it's called, which I don't understand. But Tegna will just take all of Gannett's money and Gannett will go under. So, oh well, too bad. But outside of that, there's nothing.
All I can think of is new people being brought into the station.
You're getting to the time of the year where there's a lot of jobs open, but I know that my market's getting a new weather person from the Quad Cities. At least that's what I've been told. But
opening at the Kansas First News Outlet because their morning meteorologist left a couple of months ago. I'm not aware of them ever filling it. So
yeah.
Somebody might look into that if they want to start out at mornings or weekends there.
Yeah.
We have two right now. I'd have to look to verify it. But.
Yeah, there a lot of from what I've always seen with jobs, which I've actually looked into, not for me, but just to look at them. A lot of them are in the smaller markets, like you said, and if you want to in the large market ones, you have to have experience.
Yep.
Well, you're not going to get that unless you count experience as being at a college TV station. For example, let's say like Mississippi State has one, OU has one, Iowa State has one, but that counts. I mean, that's the problem. And I don't think a TV show being a reality on TBS is going to count as experience.
No.
And I think what was it? They made some, from what I saw from the promo, they made a fake TV station on that show, going back to it, God, what was it called? Cast?
I picture this being like, I picture it being like the movie Anchorman and not being like actual newsroom or television environment at all.
Well, they made a studio. I saw
and then they get ratings, but it's really stupid.
the picture that I saw, the picture that I assume you saw too with the cast. That's the studio.
Yeah.
They made a studio. It's supposed to be some News 4 or something or other. And the first thing you look at the cast picture and you look at some of them and I'm thinking, oh boy, some of these people. You're like, oh my goodness. But, and I'm sorry, we're kind of, to the viewers, that we're kind of going off on tangents everywhere, but outside of that, the weather boring around here, rainy, stormy, cold for the next.
Cold for this time of year for your area. It's just been kind of average to below average temperature wise here. Last night, I guess I can tell everybody we had a straight line wind event come through, and first time in about 3 years, I saw power flashes. That was in straight line winds though to my west northwest. Last time I saw power flashes.
Got excited.
Yeah, and the last time I saw power flashes in a storm was the 2012 tornado that hit Wichita, Kansas. So that was interesting to see, and then made me go rush in because I was like, when that gets here, we might have problems. I would guess we only have about 60-mile-an-hour winds here, but other areas of Kansas City have about 80-mile-an-hour winds.
Now, the weather here has just been, lately has been rather just rainy, cold. I'd have to go back and look. I think it's only hit 90 here once. And I don't see it hitting 90 at least for the next week and a half. Maybe in 2 weeks it might. But with all the moisture like we talked about earlier, it's going to struggle to get up there because we're going to have all that transpiration of the moisture out of the corn. Because the corn is already, when I was driving around today, the corn is already past waist high in some areas.
I didn't know how tall.
So, but otherwise we could, I assume you already did your shout out because you shouted out the weather 2020 where you can get a personal.
Yeah, I think I did it early.
You wanted to get it out of the way.
Yeah. But, you can do a shout out if you want.
Yeah, I'll probably shout out the article or articles about that show that we complained about. I'm wondering what the heck's going on because I'm hearing sirens outside, or is it you?
Oh, no, that's your end.
Okay. I don't know. Something's exciting going on. Maybe there's a tornado outside. I don't know. It is cloudy, but there's no rain here, at least that I know of. Oh, yep. It's the sirens going off here. I think they go off for when they call the fire department.
Oh, yeah, that's what a real small town is.
Well, small as in we have it's not 5,000 people live here, but yeah, they sound the sirens.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's my excitement, but that's not what. So I'll shout out the article. I think it's on TV Spy. It shows the cast list as to who they are, what they're doing, and what degrees, if any, they have, and whatnot. So, and I'd probably wait. I'll wait. Let me go find it while we have a little bit of time. And okay, I think here it is. Come on, load, please. It always.
A million viewers are getting impatient now.
Yes, the review. Okay, I think this is the. Yep, here it is. I found it. Now let me go and screen share this. Right here. So let me just a minute.
Yeah, there.
See, here's the people, and this is some fake news studio. So the first thing you're like is, who are these people? And I already know who all of them are because here are the contestants right here. All of these people right here. The only one that's actually on TV at an actual TV station is
Michelle Rotella. I see on there.
Yeah, that's the person that I found.
Why would he do the show if you already have a job? That'd be my question.
Yeah, Miller Robson or Robeson is actually at WLTZ in Columbus. Georgia.
Huh. Because he's a former wrestler, so you know that's going to be crazy already.
Yeah. So these are the
That's why this sounds suspicious on it being stupid and not like for the science or professional side of it.
Yeah. So these are the people. So this is the website. There's going to be 8 episodes of this show that starts on August 8th on Saturday at 11 Eastern, 10 Central. Saturday, August 8th.
I don't think that's the best time to be airing new shows. We're still probably sure about 8 times a week, but still, I don't understand the Saturday time.
Yeah, so this is what the show.
Just to clarify this, people, Saturday is the least watched television day of the week. If you want a show to die, you put it on Saturday. So I don't understand why people are putting a new television show on a Saturday. But, okay.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that's probably why they did it. So
because they already know it's not going to do well.
Yeah. So, as for anything else, John, do you want to give out if you want anybody to contact you or not? Or
contact me, just go through foreverchasing.com or weather2020 and ask for John.
Yeah, and make sure you get the real John, because if it's fake John, then you don't want that.
No, you don't want that. That wouldn't be no fun.
But anyway, as for pop guests that are coming up, excuse me, Patrick Powell will be on in 2 weeks, because next week we're probably not going to do a show.
It's 4th of July, then take it off. Enjoy yourself.
Yeah, we were going to, but I'm looking at possibly trying to reschedule one of our guests that we couldn't have earlier this month. Patrick Powell will be on in 2 weeks from WLUK in Green Bay, Wisconsin. He'll be on the 9th. He's on a Thursday. And then at the end of July, Travis Meyer from KOTV in Tulsa will be on.
That'll be a fun one.
And he'll be on. Now, we could have a special guest on that program in case Travis is not on. So be aware of that. And I also just did get an email today that Scott Sistek, who's at Como 4 in Seattle, will be on sometime in July. I don't know when. It might be he's leaning to the 24th at this point. I have to confirm it at sometime. Probably by the time I look at my email, I'll find out that he's confirmed it. So we'll see about that. We're still looking up and emailing people that don't respond. So, but you can get a hold of me through Twitter at IowaWX. You can get a hold of me on email, IowaWX, that's IOWAWX at gmail.com. You can find the website that Henry, and all of us work at. John actually contributes when he can, when he's not actually being paid to work at his actual job. At iawx.net, where you can find all our stuff there, our bios and whatnot, and anything else that Henry puts up, because Henry does most of the work on the website stuff, because he's the website guru person unless stuff breaks. So anyway, for John, who's at his lovely palatial home outside of Kansas City, and where I'm in my lovely apartment, this is Jeff Wilcox, and have a wonderful weekend, and God bless.